Welcome, one and all, to another edition of SoulSym Sideshow. As usual, I am your host, Soulsym Mirak, and with us this evening is Virtuous.
Greetings, good morning, and good evening.
Uh, and this special sideshow, um, we are getting into the meat of the letter that Virtuous um, wrote and then amended, addressed to Avril and her superior several episodes ago, requesting a time to sit down and discuss things with her. Um, as many of you know, if you've been following along, Avril has been a relatively important character in the tapestry of aspects and non-voice for several episodes, especially since reaching Shar. And she is a colorful character, to say the least.
Hmm.
But um, and Virtuos has had some words that he's wished to share with her, but has lacked the opportunity to do so. Um, so, without further ado, I will go ahead and set the stage. Um, when we last left Virtuos, there was a training session between the aspects in the danger room of the dog, um, wherein um, Asterisk had encouraged Virtuos to take, actually actively take a life for the first time in order to understand the severity and the weight of the situation that he finds himself in. Um, and much to Virtuoso's surprise, the rest of the aspects came in and offered their support, um, as well as their camaraderie to lessen the weight of the request. Um, Following that interaction, uh, Virtuos returns to his room to contemplate the events of training when he happens to doze off. He's more tired than he had anticipated. And when opening his eyes, he finds himself in a library, a study hall of sorts, sitting at a table with cups, with teacups and a kettle, as well as a sugar dish and several other jars resting upon it. Um, Immediately to his left is Asterix, and across the table from the two of them sits Avril.
Oh, so can I add a little something just for a bit of flavor right before he went to sleep?
By all means.
When when Virtuos went back to his room, he still had a lot on his mind, and wasn't speaking to him, but he could still feel that presence, that sort of intensity that Asterisk always carried. But there was at least one moment where he didn't feel that. So as he sat on his bed, made sure the door and everything was closed, he would hold his hand out and manifest a glass of that same alcohol that he had gotten from that one Docs had ordered for him in the bar at that one time.
Okay.
Asterisk was in the back of his mind saying, "Do not do it. Do not." But Virtuos just cut him off. I learned something. Kind of interesting, I guess. When I drink stuff like this, you get really, really quiet. And that makes things a little bit easier for me. So I think I'm going to. He could feel himself starting to swoon. Asterisk, don't stop me. I just want one. He'd fall up. His eyes would open. He saw Avril. He blinked. He saw Asterisk right next to him. He almost stood up out of his chair right there. Oh, ha, ah, oh, um,
A bit jumpy,
hello.
maybe.
Yeah, I. It's been a day, and your timing, as always, is quite impeccable.
Yes. I noticed that you were about to do something, let's say reckless. So I figured it'd be a nice time to have your conversation.
Huh, impeccable indeed. And I wouldn't call it reckless. I was just. You were about to walk down a very dark and slippery slope. Do not feign ignorance. Yeah, I was just going to do that, I guess.
Running from yourself is a dangerous reason to imbibe substances, shall we say.
But it works for the others. I mean, Wandax does it, and there's like 14 of him.
And you don't think he's running from something when he does that.
Mojo does it, and there's like a billion of him.
He happens to be the crown prince of an entire empire. What are you
Fair
running
point.
from?
I, I, I. He looked at Asterisk, and then looked at Avril, and he actually sighed a bit, shoulders slumping, his ears even drooping a little.
Surely your ancestors aren't that terrifying.
No, no, it's just ever since ever since I met everybody else, or I guess really specifically ever since Asterisk and myself, but more so Asterisk, helped Zevril create the dog, that was my first time really just switching and not being there for a long, long period of time, and ever since then things have been kind of different. It's like I'm not me anymore. I mean, he looked at Asterisk, who just very calmly shrugged. He wasn't looking judgmental or nothing. We are like different people now. And I guess that's kind of scary because we still have the same body. Asterisk looked at Avril, and you could tell that Asterisk was already trying to like impose himself in this space, make his face the sun, just kind of see how far he could stretch his psychic strength. But he would say, "We have never been at odds with each other before. Everything we did was in synchronicity, as long as I stayed in the background." He looked at Virtuos, who just shrugged. I mean, yeah, that's what always worked. I don't know what changed.
Hmm. So, as soon as a situation required more than just your input, you became anxious.
A smidge, yeah.
And
He was like swirling the teacup now.
has Asterisk not helped you in situations that you were experiencing a sort of choice paralysis?
I mean, yeah, always, but no one ever tried to talk to him before. No one, I mean, as he was swirling his teacup, the reflection inside the cup itself was him, but a much, much younger him. He was kind of just looking down into
Let's go there.
it. Oh, um, he looked up at Avril.
Avril was a much younger version of herself. Um, Probably, she usually looks around 34, 35. Right now, she's about 16. Come, young one, let's go for a walk.
He would
Yeah.
take a sip of the cup, a long sip, and when he did, by the time he put the cup down, everything was a little bit different. His memories just flowed out, and it was rather pastel, actually, almost like a Steven Universe kind of backdrop, where everything just seemed really nice and fanciful and kind of just real calming, warm but soft colors. While he was there, while the scene kind of rearranged itself around him, he would kind of send a, not intentionally, but just like a mental message to Avril. Before we do this, I did want you to get to know me, actually. So this does work out. But you, from what I understand, you're like me. You can just look into people's minds and pluck out thoughts and memories and read them like a book. But when you read people like books, when you're always just looking down at them from above, then you don't ever really get to know them. You just learn them like a subject in school. But everyone's connection with everyone is different. My view of you is different from everyone else, and your view of me is different from everyone else, and everyone's view is different from everyone. So maybe now you can experience me, but like, like an actual person.
You make an interesting proposition. I will humor you.
Okay.
Inform me.
Um, if we're gonna do this, though, I gotta warn you, you might feel really, really vulnerable. I'm going back.
All right. She goes into her waist pocket and pulls out a set of keys. And there's five or six, about six keys on this chain. Um, it's a very ornate platinum locker bangle that holds these keys. And she says, "Here you go. These are for you."
He held his hand out and very sensitively accepted them.
When the keys touch Virtuoso's hand, um, a hallway of doors appears to their left and their right. You have control. Your memories are first, and for each one you show me, I will share one in kind. Fair?
Had the biggest childlike smile on his face. Definitely fair.
Let's
And
go.
he'd plummet into a memory almost immediately. The two of them falling into this, again, into at least his memory of his homeland, which was very rosy and kind of nice. They were out on a field, and there were about six or so other children there. They were all playing kickball. Virtuos was about 8 years old or so, 8 or 9. And would Avril be there as well, like on the field alongside?
Yes, she would be um, actually sitting on a fallen tree on the side of the field, watching, almost as if she was
Nice.
babysitting the children.
They all had this little ball, little red kickball, and everyone was playing. Virtuos wasn't the most athletic, but he was doing pretty good, and it seemed like your average day. But a little, well, not a little, deeper voice would kind of resonate behind Avril. Virtuos seeks to show you this, to show you his humble beginnings, not just to find common ground. He believes you to be larger than life, always separate, a handler, less than a person. He invites you to partake in the game.
And have you always said what he was unwilling to, as if you were a inactive participant watching from the sidelines?
It is more complex, though he does not accept it. We are the same. We complete each other. If
I'm
he is
aware.
the left arm, then I am the right, and vice versa. He is simply a left arm who believes himself both, while I accept my place.
Fair enough. Go on, little
As
one. And uh, a smaller version of Avril will run giggling onto the field. Hey, can I play?
Virtuous, the ball had just flew to his hands. He stumbled backwards. He saw Chibi Avril. Oh, hey, yeah, yeah. We were just picking teams, and I was probably going to get picked last, so and there would be the first part of the memory, that sense of anticipation of being a kid, of being awkward and stumbly, of not having your whole coordination and waiting to be chosen by the other kids just so that you could prove yourself. It took some time, but eventually both of them were placed on either the same team or a different team, and they would just be having fun kicking a ball around. But after some time, one of the kids would say, "Okay, okay, okay, that's enough. Vert, do the thing." Virtual skidded to a stop. Huh? Now? I didn't prepare anything though. But after all this jostling from the other kids, Virtuos smiled a little sheepishly and stepped back. Okay, 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 okay. I can just make it up. I'll make up the story and swords. He held up one finger, and in all the kids' hand, what looked like swords made of light would appear. They were completely illusionary. It seemed as a kid he didn't have many spells, but he was pretty good at minor illusion. And he was using it in order to make a game for all the kids. They had swords. He created a little monster, and everyone had to work together to beat the bad guy. The problem is, the bad guy was a little tough. The kids were having a little bit of a hard time, and eventually, frustrated, one kid said, "This isn't fun. I don't want to play anymore. I'm going home." The others agreed. The Virtuos looked a little confused. But you guys can do it. I mean, I know it's difficult, but you just need a little. Wait, come back. And they'd all leave. But he didn't seem too concerned. He just sighed. Well, there they go. One kid yelling out, "Just go talk to your imaginary friend. Play with him." And Vert smiled. Uh, Star, I think they're talking about you. He was looking off to the side. At this point, he had only ever heard Asterisk in his mind, and Asterisk was a way too fancy word for him, so he just called him Star.
Mhm.
But he would just start playing with himself, creating that monster, creating an illusion of a sword in Asterisk's hands, and fighting on his own. Not particularly sad that his friends were gone. He knew that they would come back. But even as a youngin, he had this sort of this creativity, this playfulness about him. If I may ask, how did Avril take to the game, or a young Avril?
Um, she, uh, when the other children began to get defeated, um, Avril, the young Avril, would speak up and say, "That's not how warriors work. We can do this. We just have to band together, learn his movements, and strike where he's weak. Come
Come on.
on!" And as she says, "Come on," uh, the field of play, like the field where the game was being played, would shift to almost something akin to a battlefield.
Hmm.
And Avril was this same young Avril uh, is dressed in child battle armor. Um, the sword in her hand would become very real, as would the one in Virtuous's hand. Um, and a younger Asterisk would uh, appear beside them. And she would say, "All right, men, it's time for us to take down the evil Centaurs. Let's go. We have to go and take out the princess so that we can convince the king to surrender. Are you with me?"
After a look of surprise, and the sword almost dropping out of his hand, he had to stumble to catch it. Whoa! I mean, yeah, yeah, of course. Asterisk, just smiling, quietly nodding.
And the three of them would storm through um, a promenade into this lavish palace, fighting their way upstairs and defeating soldiers who were easily twice their size. Um, uh, each each swing of the sword was parried by another, and each enemy felled would bring them closer to their objective, closer to their destination. Um, as they reached the top of the stairs, um, a massive hole could be seen in the side of what was supposed to be a hallway, and out this hole you could see a uh, forest village, or rather a forest kingdom, um, under siege, billowing uh, clouds of smoke coming from flaming tree houses in uh, market districts,
Mm.
and from armies dressed in black gold fighting against uh, a defending force dressed in white and blue with silver trim. Um, Looking down at their clothing, Virtuos and Astros would notice that they were wearing the black and gold armor, same as Avril, um, and almost struck in awe by the sight. Avril would shake her head and say, "Don't get distracted. I know it's beautiful, but we have a job to do. Let's go. She's right down there." And uh, she would kick down the door that was before her, um, almost with a force that did not match her small stature.
Hmm.
Um, and in the room would be 12 guards standing in a defensive formation in front of a small girl and her mother, um, who was clutching her uh, near a cupboard. And she says, "If you don't have the heart to fight with me, I understand. I can handle this myself." And she would turn into a, a large dragonoid creature of with rainbow colored scales that um, strobed in the light and dazzled like with a dazzling gleam, and uh, you would see her tearing through the guards that were in her way, making short work of them before she took a deep, deep inhale and
Whoa!
unleashed this prismatic breath, charring the young girl and her mother. Um,
Virtuous had tried to run to stop her, like, wait, 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 but she's already. And then he just saw the lights, the prismatic colors, and it was kind of beautiful until the aftermath.
yeah. So
Dropped his sword there, but Asterisk was all for it.
when the breath weapon cleared, uh, the girl and her mother were encased in ice with um, shards cascading off of their backs, as if the air behind them had been frozen as well.
Mm.
And Avril would turn back into this childlike version of herself, and um, breathing heavily, you would hear footsteps coming from behind the three of them, the three of you, as this tall man, um, again cloaked in this black and gold armor with long flowing uh, obsidian hair, walked up and placed his hand on the top of Avril's helmet and said, "Good girl, Avril. You have done well on this battlefield, and You have struck a blow to the king that I believe he soon won't forget. Good job." "Thank you, Daddy. I did my best for you." "And your best was quite acceptable." And
Vert's
in
jaw was on the floor as he was staring at that, taking a good long look at the guy, but looking back at Avril. And how old does she appear right now?
about 12, just a little bit
But
older than Vert at that same age.
but you're just a kid. Why would they make you do that?
It was my culture. Um, we are taught to fight around the age of 2. Um, I took my first life when I was only 4 years old, and I was so good at my training, had such prowess, that my father had me and my brother at the front lines of his wars from 6 or 7. This
Do you even
was
know who you were fighting against or what you were fighting for?
100%. We were fighting for control of what is now the Sintese Empire. My father was the chieftain of a protected class, and the Eldrin King, who had recently taken control from his father, felt that our place was no longer had no longer been earned. We needed to repay them for the gratitude of allowing us to exist within their borders. And this particular situation was a display that our presence was not for our own protection, but in fact for his.
With a slow nod, though his face didn't show too much understanding, Virtuous was kind of wordless, but Asterisk understood fully. You were a symbol, used to send a message that words could not convey.
Exactly. All right. What do you want to show me next?
Yeah, I guess we have a bus to catch. And inexplicably, a bus would roll by, almost a trolley. As it did, it kind of behind it, like painted the scene into something a little different. Again, back to those pastel colors, and a scene of two of them, teenagers, rushing for the bus, or at least rushing to get to the next bus stop because that trolley had dusted them. At this point, a teenage virtuoso was booking it. Oh, I have to get to the academy. Ah, first day, first day, first day. I can't mess this up. Can't mess this up. No, Aster, I can't just be using magic willy nilly. I have to do it. Oh, they're getting so far. The trolley had stopped at I guess a bus stop like a block or two away, and Virtuous was never gonna catch it. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Little bit of magic. Just a smidge of magic. We're just going to think of something. Think of something. How about rocket boots? And he would, without even really thinking about it too much, do a series of gestures that he had never really done before, focusing the conjuration on his feet to create these glyphs that would cause almost like thrusters at the bottom of his feet. But he didn't measure the force or intensity of said thrusts, so he went rocketing, spiraling up through the air, screaming all the way.
A young adult Avril, probably around the age of 17, again a few years older than Virtuos, would be um, soaring the through the sky as Virtuos spiraled up. Um, so, have you always had this much difficulty controlling your power out of fear?
It's not fear. I'm just trying to figure things out. My own. He's like zooming around like a firework on crack right now. My own way. And I never really studied or had a book or anything. So I just did it my own. My family is a warrior family. He crashed into some cabbages sitting up. So I figured I would just teach myself. But then I realized studying is really boring, and it's kind of like whatever I think just works, right? So I think I just need to think more clearly. Okay. He sat up, wincing, and I missed the bus. Darn it.
Well, I guess I can teach you today. Because the university's a bit far away. I don't think you'll make it in time for class.
I don't think I will either. And I can't afford to not make it again. This is going to be like the third again. Okay, okay. Maybe a little bit of teaching. In fact, I think I would appreciate that.
All right. So Avril would stand, or rather, she would revert back to her uh, natural form and fix her hair up into a bun, put a, a hairpin through it, um, and as she uh, dusted her shoulders off, um, she would her clothing would change to that of teacher's attire, a button-down shirt, pencil skirt, um, and the bus stop, or rather the cabbage stand, would turn into a classroom. Um, on the board, it detailed a bunch of words, a bunch of English words, and then script underneath them, under each word, translating the common language, the common tongue, into the weave.
At this point, Virtuos may have also looked a little bit older, maybe like 16ish or so. And he had a grimoire, a spellbook, a scroll, something just set up in that way that almost like a DM screen, like blocking vision of him behind his desk.
Mhm.
He was leaned down behind it, and in between his hands, he had this spell cube, this little. mana mixture of sacred geometry and just raw energy waves of different types. He had always had a bit of a harder time in school. So he had developed this technique in order to avoid people. Whenever someone would ask him something, or they'd be like, Vert, come here, do this, or Vert, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. He would always kind of, whenever he felt pressured or like it was too much social, he would duck away into his little spell cube and pretend to be working. That way, whenever they saw him, they're like, oh, he's working on something big, something dramatic, don't bother him. But in reality, he was, as Avril mentioned, hiding.
Mr. Virtuose, screen down, please, sir.
He slowly peeked up over his screen, nodded, slowly dipped back down, and then the front of the screen would just kind of say, screen down, with arrow pointing down.
You know the rules of my classroom. Avril, would you do the honors? And a 20-something Avril would slam your the screen down and say, "Teacher, he appears to be distracted by that cube in his hand." Yes,
Huh? Cube? No, not, it's not a, I'm not, what? It would break apart into like little tinier cubes that would turn into little pyramids, that would turn into little circles, like marbles and roll away. Oh. I was
and
paying
that
attention.
is, I'm sure you were, but it just so happens that that is exactly what our lesson today is about. The weave is a network of ambient language. It surrounds us. It exists in everything and everyone. For those of us who are blessed with the ability to hear the weave, reality seems to bend at our thoughts. And it helps to know where those thoughts can lead and how exactly to shape them before they leave our minds and intermingle with the weave around us. On this board, I have written several power words and their mana equivalent. Memorize them, study them, and they will help you as you progress through this life.
The
Onomancy is the most potent form of weave translation. Never forget that.
the images on the board would start to shift just a little bit, becoming like a mirror. Virtuos once again saw Wandax obliterating everyone. He shuddered violently, and his memory kind of jogged back to when he immediately tapped into chronomancy and the damage he had done to himself because he wasn't familiar with it to bring everyone back. Slowly, nervously, and reflexively, he started creating another little tiny mana cube beneath his desk.
And as he started to create that mana cube beneath his desk, the desk itself would turn transparent and then disappear altogether. If you're going to work with that, focus on it. Don't just fiddle with it while trying to ignore the world around you. It's doing more than you realize.
It's just shapes and energy.
The world is just shapes and energy. Reality
Mm,
is just shapes and energy. Your emotions, shapes and
mm,
energy.
huh. I I guess I didn't really think about it like that.
You've allowed your
But
thoughts to bleed into reality. and then you fiddle with them as if there were some manner of puzzle to figure out.
But they are. And sometimes this is gonna sound really weird, but he would hold up the spell cube, begin to twist it like a Rubik's cube, but the shape would kind of change, becoming almost like not quite a diamond, but more like almost looking like a jewel. And then it does this weird thing, right? Where he would take this jewel and pluck it into his arm, not realizing it was a spell seed. I can do that. He held the back of his hand up with the inert spell seed sticking out. So
Did
is
you
this just thought in a physical form?
did you see
And if it
that
is,
class? We have a horticulturalist in our midst, a spell gardener. Yes, that is just thoughts made manifest. This or that seed that you just planted into your arm helps to guide your thoughts towards specific magical configurations. Did you notice that? Or was it just
mm,
something cool that you could do?
a little bit of both. I mean, it does feel good. Like it feels right when I do it. It feels, my thoughts and my guiding my thoughts. So it's like a meditation. Maybe that's why it feels good. But I just thought everybody could do it. He was looking at the rest of the class. Oh, he has his mouth open.
Everyone else in the class is just kind of slack jawed. Um, no, Virtuous. That is a special skill, one that is held by very few. In the magical world, you're what's known as a savant. You have access to a celestial garden if you only bothered to discover it within yourself.
He
And
actually kind of looked down, thinking about that. I mean, I don't really want to be special. I just want to be normal like everybody else.
and as he says this, um, the classroom would turn into an ornate audience chamber. Virtuos would be standing on the left side of the chamber. Again, Asterisk on his left, and the rest of the room would be filled with nobles as well as guards and a few members of royalty. At the back of the audience chamber was a throne, oh, one very large ornate throne, and six smaller, less decorative thrones, three on either side of it. Um, that same man with obsidian hair sitting in the central throne, and five women sat in five of the chairs, two to his left, three to his right. The
Mm,
one immediately to his right was slightly larger than the other five. The chair was slightly larger than the other five. And just at the bottom of these stairs leading up to these thrones was a young adult Avril around the age of about 24, 25. Why is it, Father, that I am sent everywhere in the world and Sovereign, my brother, gets to sit here and read books? Your other children are learning from other masters and and don't even look at the battlefields that you had me on when I was their age.
mm.
Why am I now on diplomatic missions? I would love to be here with my family, but you send me to capital after capital, to be preyed upon by lecherous men. Do you know the thoughts I've heard, father? You will mind your tone, young woman. Tell me, do any of these lecherous men have the capacity to overtake you? Are you not nearly my equal in combat? Are you not my superior in ways of the mind? You travel because it is in your nature to understand those around you and bend them to your will. You will not shirk your talents because you would rather be home with your siblings. You do not have the luxury of resting easy. This empire must be maintained while I am at war, and the only one who can maintain those relations is you. You have known what your duty is since you were a young girl. You will not forget them now. But father, but nothing. The Sentese Empire stands because we do what is necessary, not what we would like. Would you have our enemies storm the gates because you are not bolstering our allies? Would you rather Osgiliath fall to Rajon? Do you understand what it would mean to have the Formians making pathways underneath our soil to invade from beneath our ground? I think it's better that someone within our family be on their council whispering to their empress, telling her, warning her that she should not cross this family. Or would you have what happened to your youngest brother happen to the rest of your siblings?
Mm.
We've still yet to find him. That is why your brother studies. He wishes to navigate the Feywild. He has gone on many an expedition in your absence. He is not sitting around idly as you so believe. He does what is necessary to keep this family intact, to make this family whole again. Why do you think you're so special that you don't have to do the same?
Yo.
Avril would hang her head. Forgive me, father. Where am I to go next? You will go to the magic city of Urumshar. The World Library needs a custodian of sorts, someone to manage the intelligence that they gather. That will be your new station, since there are lecherous men in other countries. The men of Urumshar are far too consumed with their magical research to pay attention to a young girl such as yourself. Utilize that ignorance and make yourself something formidable, so that none will try you ever again. And should they try you, make them regret it. Learn how. Now leave.
Mm.
And Avril would turn. As she turned, the audience would part, and she would walk through the crowd. And as she reached the back, where Virtuous and Asterisk stood, she would look towards you um, with a pained glance and a tear streaming down her left eye.
There was a tear streaming down Virtuous's right eye, though Asterisk was stone. He didn't understand the concept of family like that, so he completely agreed with the father. She had a job to do. She was born to do said job, and it should be her ultimate honor to complete it. But Virtuous just looked at her, and right as she walked up, with that tear still streaming down one of his eyes, he said, You you never got to be a person. You were used as a tool your entire life.
I had a
And
job
then
to
when
do.
you finally had the chance, no, you're not a job. You're not a weapon. Avril, you are. He was looking at her now as if he was really seeing her as a true, just individual, not a handler, not some powerful psychic, nothing, just Avril. Job or no job, Avril, you're enough.
I'm more than enough, young Kalashtar. I am the aspect of knowledge and the firstborn of the great Emperor Sintes. I
And
am
without those
Eonon,
titles, without that, without all of that, what would you be?
an Eonon girl, one with more power than the average kingdom has within their entire army, the first of 16 children, born to a man with 6 wives, one twin, and also the strongest telepath on the planet. If
Asterisk smiled and nodded. Exactly. You were forged into your circumstance to be exactly who you are today. This one does not understand it. Virtuous kind of glared at Asterisk. Because it's not right. She never even had a chance. Her father molded her thoughts, molded her body, molded everything to be an extension of him, just another version of him in a new generation. But what
and
about her?
if he hadn't, one of his enemies would have done the same. That is the way of imperial discourse. When one has as much power as my family does, the luxury of want is not to be considered because obsession over desires leads to the ruin of the world. I
What?
have I have been in every capital across this planet, save for your home, because closed borders are closed borders. And everywhere I have gone, this has been the way of power.
Okay, I get that. But, like, have you ever been fishing? He
Fishing.
seemed to be asking an honest question. Yeah, fishing. Have you ever done it?
I cannot say that I have ever gone fishing. I
You
presume
see, you don't.
I presume you have a memory that we can indulge in to that
No.
nature.
He pointed at her. No, we're gonna go fishing, like people, like friends. Maybe not now, not today, but I'm putting it on the list. If I can have anything from my job as an aspect, then that's what I want. I want us to go fishing with no powers,
No palace.
no powers.
Okay. Um, you want to bait the hook with worms and bugs, throw them into the water, and let luck decide whether we eat or not?
Listen to how you sound. Yes, that's the best part. Being out on the waves, it sucks. It's terrible. You never know what's going to happen, and that's the whole point. Because eventually you get that pull. And that's it. You don't know what's down there. It could be a boot. It could be a crawfish. It could be a giant catfish. It could be a whole kraken. It could not be a kraken. Okay, but still, it can be. It can be. Anyway, those little things. Isn't that what you're fighting for? Your kingdom, your empire, the power, all of that. If it's not for peace, then it's just expansion for the sake of expansion. It's consuming. It's a void. And if you're doing all that just so people can live peacefully, what do you think people do in times of peace? They live. Not just learn, not just be a repository of knowledge, but they live, they experience. Knowledge without experience is just kind of hollow, isn't it? You can definitely pull the memory of fishing from my mind, but it's not your memory. You've still never done it. You just know what it's like. How many things in this world that you've never got to do, Avril? And you just have to live vicariously through other people in order to just experience a smidge of what you're actually fighting for, what you're protecting.
I have witnessed, hmm, it's a big number, but we'll just call it 1 million people fish. I've seen billions shop food and prepared meals and shop for toys, try on different dresses, and go on dates. These are not things that I have done myself, but these are things that have happened or others have been able to experience because of my efforts, because I have kept them safe and I have kept war from their doors. So while I may not have experienced these things myself, I do know the joy that others have experienced because of my sacrifice. And as
He
it
folded his arms.
stands, to this day, that's enough for me. Now, that may change next week, but for now, and for the last 1200 years, that has sufficed. But if you
Ooh.
would like to fish, we can fish.
His expression actually grew a little bit darker when she mentioned next week.
Is something
Oh,
the
yeah.
matter?
Well, before I talk to you about it, there's one last thing we should see, that you should see.
Lead the way.
And his shadow will begin to expand outwards, and the two of them start to sink into it. Asterisk looked at Virtuos a bit concerned. Virtuos, you have not shared or shown this memory with anybody. Are you sure? Vert just kind of gave a bit of an awkward smile. It was somewhat reassuring, but not really. I I think it's important, especially after what we're gonna have to talk about later. So at this point, like the shadow had consumed most of them until they fell into darkness. And in that darkness, there was a voice calling out, "Please, I didn't want it. You can have it. I don't know how. We'll figure that out. But you can have it. Just don't go. I know I don't deserve it. I know I didn't do anything. I never do anything. Things just come to me. I didn't choose this. Don't leave." The darkness would clear to show two people that looked like across a broken bridge. And the other person looked a lot like Virtuos, though a bit older, still purple and pointy eared though. And they were glaring at him, saying words that apparently Virtuos couldn't remember. But the pain from each word was still striking him, his entire form almost practically shrinking. I know it should have been you. I know it should have been you. You can, I don't, I never wanted this. The other person seemed to be saying something, but above them, it looked like the sky was falling. There were these clashing two meteors in the sky that seemed to be clashing against each other, bouncing back and forth. Not neither one gaining any ground on the other, but looking like they were forming cracks in the sky with each impact. Ammonium, please. And tell Fracture up there to stop. And then something responded. Fine, bullet, fracture, whatever you want to call it, but Aster doesn't want to fight him either. I don't want to fight you. Just take the power. If I don't deserve it, if that's what you really think, then just take the power. Don't go. But Virtuous's older brother was already leaving. Both of them looked severely wounded, as if they had a major fight.
Your brother.
Yeah, he always thought that he should have been the aspect of creation. He always thought that I kept getting things I don't deserve, even as a kid, and he always had to work for it. So I just tried to give it to him. I just thought it worked like that, but Aster wouldn't allow that. And and Fracture, he kind of shook his head. Fracture would have taken that power and done terrible things with it. So he left, and he was looking back to where he was, but where his brother was, but the memory was different now. It was a memory of creating a life for the first time with his power. He still had tears streaming in his eyes. He was in a forest-ish kind of area, though again, it seemed almost part forest, part city, as if the memories were all muddled with all the emotion. And he created a perfect copy of his brother. Okay, so you're my brother now. I mean, I just made you, but you're my big brother. You see, and you just even though it looked proper on the outside, Virtuos, who had never studied, who had never really learned to use his magic properly, even really learned anatomy or everything, he didn't know the complications of a body, especially a human body. And so this creation started groaning. It didn't have a proper voice box. He didn't know anything about lymph nodes or pituitary glands or all the little tiny things, the endocrine system. And so the creation didn't have any of that. It just suddenly began to bleed and feel this excruciating pain until it hit a tree, gasping, looking at Virtuos. Virtuos was panicking. Okay, I can fix this. He'd be healing him over and over, not realizing that the problem was just a foundational one, not realizing that he was prolonging the pain until, for the very first time, he shifted over to Asterisk and snapped the creation's throat, disintegrating it. When he returned to himself, there was just dust in his hands, and he was staring wide-eyed, promising himself to never again make a real living being. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just wanted you to come back.
Avril would stand just behind Vyrtuous, placing a hand on his shoulder. This is the cost of acting without preparation, of allowing desire to rule your behavior. I understand that you wanted your brother back. I understand that you missed him and you wanted to have those good times in whatever capacity you remembered them to be. But in your haste to have what you wanted, you didn't take the time to do it correctly. And your inability to accept that forced Asterisk to do what needed to be done because you couldn't even fathom it. It's no more fair to you, and it's no more fair to him than it is to you. you never learn to face your problems, and he has to carry burdens that you will never acknowledge.
He had his head down, but he slowly nodded. I thought I had learned. I thought that that would be. I thought, but I tried again. He looked up, and when he looked up, he was looking ahead, and there was a forest. He was looking at himself, his teeth gritted. Asterisk was actually hovering over him, though no one could see him, telling him he had to try again, that this was a gift, that he had lost his brother over it, he had to learn how to use it. So this time, he tried something pretty simple, a slug, a very, very simple life form, and it worked. And he was so happy that he made several more. It was a relatively secluded forest anyway, so it wasn't like they would harm anything. What he didn't realize was how destructive introducing a non-native creature could be to an environment. And when he had returned about a month or so later, that forest was deforested. So he tried to fix that, but he didn't know plants. So he set up all the wrong trees and started choking out the underground. The soil stopped being irrigated. And as he kept freaking out, once again, Asterisk would come in and fix everything before he created a national incident and got himself arrested. I don't do good when I have to study or practice or prepare. I only really do good when things come to me. So I just thought if I just I don't know, if I just maybe take it slow, I could figure it out, but I still couldn't. I made it things even worse. And that's why I became a lore master. He finally looked up. I needed to learn everything. I'm going to use this stupid power that I don't even want properly.
So, I have a question. Do you think I enjoy knowing everything about everyone I meet within minutes of having a conversation with them?
I think it's normal for you. And you don't seem like the type of person who likes surprises. So, yeah.
I would genuinely love to be surprised every once in a while. But my mental would prefer that not be the case because the courtier has seen my life play out and knows how my life would go if I didn't have this knowledge, if I couldn't identify my problems long before they became problems. You were given your mantle because no one on this world deserves it more so than you. There are lessons that you need to learn. Yes. There are skills that you have to acquire. Yes. But with your acquisition, with your understanding, the benefit far outweighs that same information, those same skills in the hands of anyone else. So while it has never come easy to you, your refusal to put in the foundational groundwork is the reason why it has been a struggle for as long as it has. If you try, you may stumble, but if you continue to try, you will become unparalleled. Creation is one of the most powerful mantles that there are.
Aren't aren't I just I don't know, like like another version of Zevro? I mean, sure, it takes extra steps for him, and his powers are a little different, but couldn't he just do it? In
No.
fact, I bet he would love having them.
Zevral is carrying the mantle of production, a blessing of necromancy, and a gift of umbrokinesis. He has three abilities that still combined don't even compare to what you're capable of doing. He
And he's
alters dead
miserable about
life
it. He
because
would
his
throw his
fo-
hands up. He
because he's
always wakes up
focused
with a
on the wrong
frown, and he
thing.
has all these great, amazing things. And in fact, all of them wake up with a frown. He was looking around. Why are all the aspects so damn sad, Avril? Even you.
Because, well, I can't really speak for the others. Zevral is sad because the one thing he wants is something that is so far out of his reach. He has to go down a very perilous road to get there. The one thing he wants is to die so that he can be with his wife. But he cannot be with his wife in death. He can only be with her by ascending to godhood. He's halfway there with his company.
Ooh, wow. He kind of scratched the back of his head. Ooh, that's a lot. So all the other ones have so much on their plate like that? Because I've had some thoughts. He kind of sighed, scratching his head. And as he said that, the scene around him started to shift a little bit to all of them, all the other aspects that he met at least, kind of grouped up. And I know, Virtuous Asterisk always tells me not to get too caught up in these parasocial relationships. But they're, hmm, each one of them I have a pretty strong connection with, right? Because okay, there's Mojo. I mean, I call him Joe or Jojo because it just feels right. You know, those feelings. Anyway, he allows it, and I don't think he allows anyone else to do it. So that's like our thing. And he was the first one to start giving me advice. He points out things about Asterisk and me hiding. He's like, I don't know, he's like that friend that keeps you accountable. But he's always moving, you know, aspect of motion or whatever the hell he does. And
Space.
I think he's honestly a workaholic. Yeah, space. He kind of put up her finger. I think that because of that, he can always be somewhere. He feels like he has to always go somewhere and fix a problem. And I don't even think he even knows what downtime is, besides to pause and get a drink and then go back to fixing things. I think he maybe hides in his work. But then you have this guy. He pointed out Wandox. This freaking guy who I'm not gonna say it. He kind of glanced to the side. But Avril could see it clearly in his thoughts that Virtuos was already starting to look at Wandox like a big brother. It wasn't intentional. In fact, he was trying not to, but it was just happening that way. He gets me so mad sometimes with his decisions and the way he wants to be like this super criminal king, but not accepting that he himself is a really good guy, nice dude, and he's just like space guy, like just always having to go somewhere or do something and fix something, like he's trying to atone for some horrible crime that he committed or something. And then he kind of pointed at Zevral and then there's this guy. And honestly, out of everyone, Zev is like my best friend. I love when we can just kind of sit down and he's creating stuff and I can just ramble and he listens, or maybe he's not listening, but he pretends like he listens. He's really cool, actually. And we made a thing. We got like the initials on our seats and we had the guillotine. He made the guillotine appear, just smiling at it. But Zevral doesn't know how to talk to people. He treats people like they're items, and he keeps making things for people as if like that's how he maintains his relationship, like giving people things. And I know it's his love language. He likes to give gifts, but he gets me so frustrated. And then he looked at Maha, and then slowly turned and glared at Avril. Glared at Avril. You owe him an apology.
Avril would look at you extremely confused. And what exactly do I owe Maha an apology for?
He folded his arms. You took something deeply, deeply personal from him because you were in his head, in his thoughts, and I'm sure he was probably thinking terrible thoughts. But he's a beast man, so you know it kind of goes with territory. But then you just took it upon yourself to just take stuff from him. like his creation energy, his whole state. And where I come from, there's a word for that. It's a really, really bad word that you do not want to associate it with yourself. So you deserve he deserves an apology. And you deserve to actually have a real relationship with somebody and not just living in your heads about them or living in their heads and then knowing everything about
Hmm.
them. And also, he's never been the same since. He kind of held his arms up. You just, you just, you are in his mind. So you know the immediate changes that happened in his head and how he feels about you, how much he cares about you, how much he wants to be there. And you're just like, oh, whatever, I'm so important and great and amazing that he's just another pawn on my chessboard. No! Maha is a person, and he's a really good guy. He has this funny laugh when he's amused about things, and we went drinking and his workshop. And look, he held up his hands. He had the golden tattoos. These are people, not pawns.
I
And he's
agree
a person.
wholeheartedly. I agree wholeheartedly. Maha is quite the amazing person. You all are. I gave Maha exactly what he asked for. I did. It may not seem that way, but you were not in the room when I expressed to him that I am a princess, and he boasted that he would make me queen. The only way that is possible is for me to produce an heir. So, with his potential, I am set to give birth to a dozen babies at one time. A dozen.
And you couldn't have just done it the normal way. You had
That's
to.
a difficult prospect for one who's never actually done it before.
No, I don't mean that. I meant like forge a relationship, get to know somebody. Like, you know,
I already know
maybe
everything about him.
we just he threw his hands up looking at her like, Avril, come on. We just talked about this 10 seconds ago.
I know everything about Maha, and he is an amazing person.
I know what I want to do today.
So, um, he will have an opportunity to get to know me as well as I do him. But that time is not now. There are more important things for him to focus on than me. There are threats to the world that are more apparent than they have ever been in my entire life since the six of you have acquired your mantles. And I cannot stop the world to build the bond that I would like to have. So I expedited part of the process. I gave him information that no one on this earth has. There are some who've gotten close, but no one nearly as much as Maha. He's my kitten, and I do care for him.
Did she just use an honorific from Maha? My kitten?
Kitten, yes. Um, there have been hundreds of men attempting to get my attention, and none of them have made as grand a display as that Mantonin. For all of his trauma and everything he's been through, you would never know it having a conversation with him. He is jovial, and idiotic at times. And he very rarely ever considers the full picture beyond his basic instincts. Oddly enough, he has been bold enough to consider himself my equal in some way and thought to contest my brother to prove that he is worthy of my time. I know his entire past, and every time I interact with him, he surprises me. So, that being said,
Well, what about the other side of it? You got to spend all that time with him. He hasn't got to spend no time with you. He doesn't know anything about the mother of his kids.
and what have you done in the 5 days since you've met me? You've toppled a gang, you fought the envoy of progression, and you also fought the envoy of restriction. He has
On
died.
whose command? You said
The,
that with a
co-
sly smile.
the courtier's command. I told you guys to work on team building. Several required that you travel to tomorrow's grave without telling me, because I would have told you not to go there, because Rent-A-Guard was down there, and I doubted that you had the capacity to handle him with your party being the way it was.
Well, if you were as much a part of this team as you clearly are, maybe you should have came with us.
And where was Mojo?
He shrugged. I don't
He
know.
was with me,
Oh,
trying to get the ducks in a row from the donation that Zevral and Wandak so generously made upon returning to the city. Did you know that they
eh,
dropped 17 billion gold on the doorstep and said fix the understate with a
uh,
with 5 suggestions on how to do so, but no real plan? You can't give that much money to a government that you know is corrupt without having a plan in place to manage it. So I took it upon myself, and Mojo assisted me in putting a plan in place to effect said money. And now, 26 hours, 24 hours after that, one of my agents goes missing, and I ask for your assistance. And apparently, there was a training exercise because the son of the Mason Lord of Volvanger, happens to be in your care. He's a very revolutionarily minded child, mind you, that Egdon. And should you stay close to him, that will keep you even that will keep you entangled for at least another week, knowing how quickly you all work. A month at the most. This is time that requires Baja's attention, because without him, as powerful as you all are, there will be a struggle, and you could all potentially die. So, I have placed our progression on hold for your survival and your safety. As much as I would love to continue this conversation, Virtuous, we are out of time. If you would like more tea, you know how to reach me. But for now, you have to go and show touch Virtuous on the forehead and push him back. Virtuous will fall into Asterisk, and the two of you will fall uh, weightlessly through through nothingness. And Virtuous will wake back up in his room.
He sprang awake. Wait, but I. He looked at the dropped alcohol on the ground. In the spillage and reflection, he saw himself. He saw Asterisk. He saw Avril, and he saw that mirage of memories. And with a sigh, a little bit of a smile, he would wipe it away, kind of clearing the area, looking up at the sky. I don't know if you could hear me, Avril, but you're part of this team too. And we care about you too. So, things are going to change. You hear me? For the better. For all of us. If that's my job on this team, then that's what it'll be. Somehow.
That is where we will end this sideshow. What a powerful sideshow it was. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please consider dropping a like, hitting that subscribe button, and pressing the bell notification so that you get notified anytime we do anything here on the channel. I have been your host, Soulsym Mirak, and with us this evening, the talented and very powerful Vyrtuous.
Good evening. Good morning. And greetings.
We'll be back in about 15-20 minutes with Teams and Tactics. And we'll have another episode of Aspect of Non-Bias tomorrow at the regular time. Uh, until then, until next time, stay safe, stay blessed, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Hey.